Big Sky Howdy, and welcome to another episode of World Bigfoot Radio, coming to you from western Montana and from northern Idaho. Because this time, for a guest, we've got a local on here, and he's got his own show too, Paranormal Portal, which is like all over the place, including YouTube and Revolver and all kinds of other places, a podcast just about everywhere. And so if you guys haven't checked it out already, check it out. And I'll now explain to you why you should check it out by welcoming the host of the show, Brent. Welcome to the show, Brent.
Hey, brother. Thanks for having me, man. I'm really honored to be here.
Yeah, it's great having you here. You know, you got one of the few shows out there that I enjoy listening to regularly. And you got such a great crew over there and people that call in and stuff all the time. So it always keeps it really interesting. And you know, since you have the call-in thing going on, like the show takes these weird right and left turns that I'm sure you don't really expect, and you just got to kind of go with that. And you do a great job on that sort of thing. I mean, I pre-record everything, so I have the luxury of editing until it sounds like I want it to. But when you're doing live radio, you don't get that.
Yeah, you know, so many times I start out a show with a whole concept in my head about how it's going to go and the things I want to talk about, and then once you go live, it's like then the portal takes over. It's got a life of its own, and so all I do is just hold on and try to keep it interesting.
Well, you do a good job of that. I mean, you can pretty much handle that all by yourself, and then you've got so many interesting regulars that tune into the show that have got all kinds of interesting things that they themselves are involved in that like to call in and give you updates and stuff like that. So it's never a boring moment and never a dull ride at Paranormal Portal. Get on over there and check it out if you haven't already. You will like it. And so the reason that I have Brent on is not just to plug the hell out of his show, but that he's also a fellow local dude here that does some Bigfoot research. And that's the first thing we're going to talk about. He's had a lot of interesting experiences in his life, which is another thing we've got in common. We're like paranormal magnets. And I don't know if you want to start out early on where you're like dealing with haunting stuff, or if you want to just start out with the whole Bigfoot thing and how you ended up getting interested in that.
No, I can start there. You know, I've ever since I've been alive, and as far back as I can remember, I've been interested in the paranormal, and that means all forms of paranormal. Sorry, the hospital helicopter is going over, so if it gets loud, is my apologies. I'm not in a MASH unit.
No problem. As long as they're not carrying me to the hospital, I'm plenty happy with it. That's fine.
No, it's none of us. No one that I know, at least. But
hopefully, is Cindy around? Have you heard from her? They're kind of close.
Yeah, she's
got that dogman thing going on right now.
You never know what's going on over there.
Honestly, that freaks me out. I just worry about her having all that activity right over there, right by her house. You know, she's getting those audio captures on her porch. Yeah,
it's really creepy. But she's she might be short, but she is so she's just a tenacious person, and I love her for it because she's just not afraid.
Yeah, and Cindy has also been a guest on Brent's show, so if you like Cindy, you can go check out more episodes with her over there at Paranormal Portal.
Yeah, we just recorded a podcast with her as well, so that'll be coming up on our podcast release. But, I've been interested in Bigfoot and in ghosts and in UFOs my whole life, and so for the Bigfoots, I was familiar with Bigfoot insofar as I'm a child of the 70s, basically, so I'm kind of dating myself here, but I knew about Bigfoot insofar as Leonard Nimoy told me there was Bigfoot, and I saw the Patterson-Gimlin film on In Search of.
Yeah, that was like my favorite show. In Search of. What was the second one that he did? He had a follow-up one that he did a few years later too.
That's right. But I
Untold Mysteries. No, that was somebody else. But yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. It's a walk down memory lane in any case. But I knew Bigfoot was something that was out there. But I knew it was out here. At this time I'm living in Minnesota, so I'm in the middle of the Midwest, just like you. We're both transplants, but Bigfoot was out here in the Pacific Northwest, and so I didn't really think much of it as far as my local area, but I was interested, and I went to the library and would get the books and read everything that I could, which, in a small town library didn't equal that much.
Yeah.
where literature failed me, my imagination and my dreaming took over, and I kept it alive in my head and heart. But it was when I was 14 years old. I think it was 14 or 15, but most probably it was 14 because I knew nobody had their license. It was me and another guy, and he was 15. Because if we would have had our license, we would have been driving somewhere else. But we were up on a nature hike. We lived right next to a state forest in Minnesota, in South Minnesota, and we were hiking up this bluff. And we got to the top, and we're dorking around. Just we were kind of country kids, and that's what we would do. Was go.
Mind if I ask? Not to interrupt, but do you mind if I ask which state forest you were near?
It was the Frontenac State Forest.
Oh, okay. I lived up in the coulees about 8 miles outside of Red Wing for a few years, and I seriously looked around that area, and I found like 4 or 5 Bigfoot sighting reports from Frontenac, so I'm not surprised, Brett.
See, I never heard about that.
Yeah, they were not reported to like the BFRO or anything. This is like you got to, talk to the locals and be dumb and bring up the subject of Bigfoot and hope they had a couple beers in them and they're willing to talk. And
wow.
If you keep doing that long enough, you start getting reports, and then you go, hey, so-and-so, have you ever seen anything weird? I talked to so-and-so, which they know. And he said da-da-da-da-da, and then they go, oh, well, if so-and-so told them that, I guess I can tell them my stories.
Right.
But yeah, I was, when you look at that area, you're not surprised they could be around there because it's perfect for them.
Well, yeah, and they're right by the Mississippi River, so there's water. There's a huge waterway, Lake Pepin area, and it's even though it's largely farmland, there's still great stretches of forest in there and stuff. And so we were up on this bluff, and it was starting to get later in the day, and we knew we had to start heading down, otherwise we'd come down in the pitch black. And I've done that before, and it's no fun trying to traverse. Rocky hillside in pitch black darkness. It was, I don't know how I survived, to be honest with you, but we knew we had to get down. So it was the afternoon, the sun was starting to fall in the sky, and we were coming down, and we got to this part of this, it's a dry run ravine. So it's a ravine that was carved out over, thousands and thousands of years, probably even from the glacier melt way back when, that carved this ravine. But it would be a wet run in the spring, but this was late summer. And we were coming down, and we stopped at this one place that's like a waterfall, except there was no water at this time. It was completely dry, and we just kind of stopped there on this natural shelf. And we're just catching our breath as we were traversing this dry run of a riverbed, but again, it's dry, but it's all these large limestone boulders all the way down. And we stopped, and we're standing there, and we hadn't been there maybe 5 seconds, just catching our breath. And behind us, like right behind us, was the most low, the most bassy, menacing growl that I've ever heard in my life. And Duke, I'm here to tell you, this wasn't just a sound. It was like a frequency, and it was shaking my whole body. I was feeling it as much as I was hearing it. It was right behind us. And to this day, I have never been so terrified in my life. I was frozen. I was absolutely frozen in fear, because whatever was behind me at that moment, I truly believed that I was about to die and something was going to kill me. And I couldn't bring myself to turn and see what that thing was. I was frozen, and my friend was frozen, and neither of us moved a muscle. And this thing was just growling, and it was this long, sustained, rumbling growl. And finally, I said to him, "What is that?" And he said, "I don't know, but we need to get the hell out of here."
Yeah.
And at that point, the only thing we could do, you get to that point where there's fight or flight. Well, I knew whatever was making that noise was nowhere near my fight category. You know what I mean? There was no way that I was going to turn around and try to man up on this thing. Mm-hmm. I had no idea what it was. It was just so big, and it was about, it was behind me probably by about 8 feet, I suppose. But it was like right there, and I don't know where it came from. We didn't see it when we came down, but it was just suddenly there and growling, and it was pissed. And all we could do was run. All we could do was the flight part. So we ran down this boulder field, and how we did that without dying, I don't even know. But it was just, that was the only option left. And so we got out of there, and we didn't quit running for probably a mile until we hit the road that was down below us. And, I didn't really think much more about it other than I couldn't for the life of me figure out what this sound was made by, because I grew up in this area, and the only thing we had was white-tailed deer as far as large mammals.
Right.
There's no black bear. There's no mountain lions. There's no anything. And besides, the noises those make didn't match this. This was like the first time I heard something that I could correlate this to was on the movie Jurassic Park. I was in the theater, and when that freaking T-Rex starts growling when all those people are in the cars, it was like I just turned white, because I was like, that's the noise. That was what it was like. It was very similar to that. And so, I carried this with me for years and growing up, and it was probably about 12 years ago. No, roughly 12 years ago, I started looking into Bigfoot more seriously as an enthusiast. And I really started researching and finding everything I could online, and all these online resources, and getting my hands on anything I could. I was surprised to learn that Bigfoot wasn't just in the Pacific Northwest. I was surprised to learn that they were everywhere, because I heard this. I'd never heard this all this time. It was just in Washington or North California or Oregon. That was where Bigfoot lived, and everywhere else was fine. Well, I found out they were everywhere, and then I started learning some of the signs and things that they do. And then I went back up into that area about 12 years ago or 10 years ago, and I went into the same area that this happened, into that state forest, and I started looking around, and I started to see things like tree breaks, and I found a little structure, and I found trees that had been stripped of their bark, and, like broken and stripped of their bark. And I was like, oh my God. And these are like young sapling kind of trees, maybe they were maple branches that were broken off, and the bark was stripped off. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh my God, these things could be here. This could be what I heard. And all of a sudden it made sense that what I had probably experienced was one of these guys. Mm-hmm. And I was just beside myself, because I'd been up in those forests all the time as a kid. And, you hear those stories in Bigfoot research about the people that are like trying to debunk it all. Well, I've been in these forests all my life, and I ain't never seen nothing like that. Well, me too. Yeah. Until it happens. Nobody sees anything until they see something. And there's no rhyme or reason to why or when or what's going to cause it to happen. But, I don't know what we stumbled on that day all those years ago, but we obviously caught one in a situation where it was really uncomfortable. And, I had been in those woods. I'd never seen anything, but then again, I had never known what to look for. And once I knew what to look for, the sign was everywhere.
Yeah, that's the creepy part. I got to tell you one, just to give you an idea on how actually fairly squatchy that area is. Mm-hmm. I was north of there, up by Hastings. I was camped up there for about 2 weeks, because there's two big forests on each side of the river.
Yes.
So perfect crossing spot. No houses for about a mile of it. Mm-hmm. So I was sort of camped out there, and sure enough, that's if you guys want to go and check out on YouTube, they actually got video in Stillwater about 2 days after I left my research area. There was a farmer out there playing with his new cell phone. He heard something grunt, and he thought it was a deer, so he whipped out the cell phone and started filming, and it was a Bigfoot, and he got good video of it. And this was about like 3 or 4 miles from where I was actually researching. My point being, they like to use these rivers and stuff for travel corridors. And the rivers present lots of little travel corridors, because a big river like the Mississippi has got coulees feeding down to it all over the place. There's these ravines, these little canyons, and they each have like a little river and stuff. And they'll go back up all these rivers and see what's up there and what kind of food they can get out of there and stuff. If it's a big enough area and there's no humans around, they might even live there, Mm-hmm. So I found out that, they're on both sides of I lived in Lake City for like 2 or 3 years. I found signs of them around there. Mm-hmm. I had a friend who was an avid fly fisherman, and he liked to go up all those little streams and creeks and those coulees, and what could you get out of there? And you know where Lecopolis is. Well, there's a little river that feeds right down there in Lecopolis, and that's what's the population of there, like 16 people or something.
Yeah,
So this guy does not believe in Bigfoot or anything, but really good fly fisherman. And he tells me the story one day. He was up there, and he got permission from the landowner who the creek ran through their property, and they said, well, you probably don't want to go up there. That's kind of a scary spot. So he went up there, and sure enough, the cloud of dread descended on him, and he heard this really loud whistle that didn't match with any animal he could think of. And then he had this feeling something was watching him and he needed to leave. And he took the hint and he left. Well, then he talked to some of his other friends from around the area, and 2 or 3 of them had actually had the same experience in that area. And I asked him, I said, well, what do you think it is? And he goes, well, everybody thinks there's some kind of monster up there, and that's why nobody goes up there and fishes. And there's fish up there, but now that I've been up there, I can see why, and I'm not going up there again either. Yeah, this is like, what, maybe 20 miles down the river from where this happened to you?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And you know what's funny is too another story that doesn't involve directly any Bigfoot, but I believe it very well could. And this one comes from my brother. He was bow hunting, and he had gotten really good at it. He kind of started out late in life bow hunting, but he got very good at it, proficient. And he said he saw a big buck come by, and he got it really good. He got a nice shot right behind the front leg, and he said he found this huge blood trail, and they followed it for as far as they could, and then he had to go back to his car to get more stuff, and then he and his friend got together and followed it. They figured they'd find it and field dress it and drag it out, but they followed this huge blood trail, probably 250 yards, and then it just abruptly ended.
Uh-oh.
And there was no deer, no trail, no gut pile where somebody else found it and dressed it out. Nothing. It was just gone. The blood trail it was gone. And he said there couldn't have been any blood left in it, to keep it going.
Yeah. And where was this at?
This was right by Wakuta area off of 61 between Frontenac and Red Wing.
Oh, God, there's no predators big enough to carry off a full-grown buck in an area like that. No way.
No. Exactly. And so he doesn't believe in any of this stuff either, but I can't think of where else his deer went. I mean, no hunter would have dragged it out without fielding dressing it. I mean, that's like asking to carry another 30 or 40 pounds.
Yeah, exactly. And just for reference for people who may live in the South or something, the deer in that area get big.
Yeah.
They're not little bitty things. It's going to be really tough for one human to drag one.
Yeah. They're over 80 to 120 pounds and in that range. Yeah.
Yeah, after you take all the excess parts you don't want out.
Yeah,
of it.
exactly. Yeah, they're big.
A lot of weight to drag around, especially when and this area, folks, is not flat. We're talking really steep little coulees and covered mostly with hardwoods, and some areas are low-lying with gigantic cottonwoods and really creepy looking.
Yeah, and swamplands all
swampy, lots of swamp. Yep.
Yeah, so it's really a pretty squatchy area now that I know. But growing up, I just thought there's deer, there's raccoons, there's foxes, maybe the stray coyote, but that was about it. So my world changed really quickly.
Yeah, and that's especially interesting coming from that area because, like I said, I've heard of several Bigfoot reports out of that area, but Frontenac, there's just no big predators there. It's too far south. There's too much farmland and stuff around it. Mm-hmm. I mean, rarely, they're just starting to occasionally get sightings of bears and stuff over there now.
Yeah, exactly. It's just they're starting to finally filter back in. But
yeah, and for years there was none of that. I used to joke with one of my friends in Lake City when they had, and this had to be close to 20 years ago when I was living there, and they had a sighting of a bear about 10 miles outside of town. And he goes, "Wow, that's unusual. You almost never hear of any bears being around here." Mm-hmm. And I said, well, yeah, there's getting to be too many Bigfoot up north, and they're chasing them out of the north, so they have to come down south here now. And we both got a good laugh out of that.
That's funny, but, it could be accurate. I don't know. They might be range.
Well, that's another interesting thing that comes up, too, is how, according to the Department of Natural Resources or whatever it is called in your individual state, certain areas are supposed to have certain animals in it, and if something else is in there, then they don't want to say that it's actually there. And this comes up a lot with mountain lions, especially on the East Coast now, where they're starting to come back into areas they haven't been for a long, long, long time, and people are seeing them, reporting them. and local forestry going, oh, there's no mountain lions around here. You're imagining things.
It's a house cat.
It's just a house cat. Yeah. Like the one guy, God, where is it? Not Chanhassen, but where do they have the horse races down there again? You know what I'm talking about?
Shakopee?
Shakopee, yeah.
Yeah.
He's like 3 or 4 miles away from it, and he's got his own horses and stuff, and there's something coming up and messing with them, and they're trying to tell him it's a stray dog. So, like, this is what the forestry tells him, oh, it's a stray dog. There's no mountain lions or anything around there. So 2 days later, he gets this absolutely fabulous picture with the back porch light on of a mountain lion sitting on his back porch, looking in his window, about 3 feet from the window, and he's got a perfect picture of it, and he sends it to forestry and goes, yeah, what kind of dog is this?
Wow. Yeah.
So just, the general warning should be necessary for just about anybody anywhere. Just because they tell you something isn't in your area doesn't mean it can't be there.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And it's clear that nature chooses its own path. It doesn't follow state lines.
No. No, and Bigfoot doesn't know where the lines are either. I mean, that's why when I got here to Montana, everybody's like, oh, there's no Bigfoot in Montana. And I'm like, oh, yeah, they all saw that Pac West Bigfoot do not cross line, So they won't go any further than there. They'll just stay in the Pac West, which, by the way, Western Montana's in the Pac West anyway. But
right.
I just thought that was hilarious, And when I first started my group, the Montana Bigfoot Project, I had somebody go, well, there isn't any Bigfoot over there in Montana, is there? And I'm like, okay, how about if I post an eyewitness encounter every day until I can't find any more and I run out of them? And I'm like, okay. So it was like 4 months later, I was starting to run low. But by then I was getting more traffic from other people that had made reports previously. And they finally conceded the point, went, yes, you have plenty of reports from over there.
Wow.
But again, to get back to your point, I mean, these things are all over the place. I've had 3 Class A Bigfoot sightings. 2 of them were in Minnesota.
Wow.
So, yeah, and that's where you had yours. Now, I'm not surprised because there's plenty of Bigfoot in that state. There's plenty of them in Wisconsin. People just don't pay any attention to it. They don't want to believe it's there. That's a Pac West thing, like you said earlier.
Yeah.
And that's just the way they think.
Right. Well, yeah, and that was what was sold for so long too. So, but even Wisconsin now, they got the whole dogman issue over there, really profoundly in the Elkhorn area with where Linda Godfrey's doing all her research, and it's just there's things everywhere.
Yeah.
That's what's really I think boggled my imagination about this journey into the paranormal is that the further you go, the more you realize how little we really know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the sad thing is it doesn't get any better. It just gets, like you gather more and more information, but there's like a zillion more rabbit holes to go down, and you don't know which one to go down next.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Even the one with the neon sign going, probably this way, dummy, and you still don't pay attention to that. You take some other left turn and go check that one out first,
Right. Yeah, exactly. And, it's I did, I got to find those pictures. I somewhere around my home here, I have some pictures that I took after I went back up into that area to look for some proof perhaps. And honest to God, I have to tell you, when I went up there looking for proof, and you can believe this or not, it's up to you guys. But when I went up there and started looking around and found a broken 6-inch sapling with no deadfall anywhere near it. Mm-hmm. And Minnesota, we don't get snow load kind of issues like they do out here in the Pac West, because our trees are hardwoods. They just don't buckle under snow weight, and the snowfalls aren't quite as profound either as we get out here in the mountains. But this thing was broke. There was nothing falling anywhere near it, and I took pictures all the way around it. And this is a 6-inch. So when this thing snapped, it sounded like a shotgun going off.
Yeah.
And it was
and the other thing is, too, the only time that really happens in Minnesota is during the dead of the winter if you have a heavy ice storm.
Yeah.
And then it could snap it off. But if you're seeing that kind of damage recently done during the warmer months of the year, good luck explaining it unless you're finding bear tracks and there's claw marks on it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So I kept going up, and I got to this one part. And I can't tell you what it was. It was just this nagging feeling. I was looking up the side of the bluff, and I saw these large limestone boulders, and then could see the bluff behind that. And I kept looking up there, and I was like, like deep inside, I knew I needed to go check out those boulders. Like there was something significant there. So I did. I walked up there and I got up just past the boulder. You have to kind of weave through them. It's absolutely invisible from below. But I got up through those boulders, and as soon as I got through there, just behind those boulders was this weird structure. Now, it wasn't a big structure. It was very low to the ground, like a survival kind of shelter, but there wasn't a cut edge on any of these logs that was making it. Every one of them was broken. And I'm talking like, significant size pieces of wood. And it was it was kind of like dug out underneath, but it was kind of flattened on top so that the leaf fall would just kind of land on it and create a blanket. But it was kind of weathered by this point, so there wasn't any fresh leaf fall because it was in the summertime. And you could see how it was put together. And for the life of me, there's no children in that area that would be going up there and creating some kind of weird structure. And besides that, they wouldn't be able to break the pieces of wood that would be necessary to make it. Now I'm going to have to send those to you, Duke, to put up here on this. But also, I looked around the boulders, and I found what I swear to God, it was a dry day. Now this is really close to the river, the Lake Pepin area, and so I mean it wasn't very far. But what I found was on one side of the boulder, it was kind of cut out underneath it, and I swear to God, it looks like a butt print, a wet butt print, was on the rock side of that dug out part. Like maybe I had pushed something out of there. I looked down on the ground. I looked down on the ground, and there was a broken piece of maple branch, and it was about 1.5 inches in diameter, not really significantly large, but it was just recently. It was recently peeled. The green bark was peeled off of it, and it was still tacky to my touch when I picked it up. So it was really, really recent. Like within a half hour of me getting there, that was peeled and put on the ground. So that's when I started thinking maybe these things eat that kind of barks and stuff, those real green tender barks, for in the lean times or whatever to get by. And it was just so profound. I wouldn't have looked up there in a million years, except that my gut kept telling me, go check that out. And so I did, and I got pictures of all this stuff. I didn't take a picture of that sapling branch that was broke and debarked, but I got pictures of everything else, and I'll send them over for you to use on the show. I gotta locate them first, but yeah, it was really incredible.
Cool. Well, speaking of pictures, you already sent me a bunch of pictures of something that you got to go take a look at, I believe, over here in Idaho.
It was. Okay, so the pictures that we're talking about are, this is a contact that was given to us. The person contacted Don, and it's a person living about 20 minutes north of Sandpoint, the town I live in. And they had 30 chickens. The story gets really bizarre too, so hang on to your socks. This gets really interesting. So they had 30 chickens, and over time they noticed they were losing chickens, but there was no feather litter anywhere. So if a fox or a raccoon or something or a bird of prey gets a hold of a chicken, they kill them. They kill them on the spot. And if it's a fox or a coyote or anything or a wolf, they'll shake it. And of course, the chickens will explode in feathers. So there'll be feathers everywhere, and then you won't have a chicken, but you'll have this big pile of feathers. No sign of anything like that anywhere near their chicken coop. It was just all they had was on the backside of the chicken coop, which bumps up to the forest. So the forest and then a yard with the chicken coop on the edge of the yard. And on the backside, on the forest side, was this, I don't know, a break in the fencing that they had around it. Now it was mostly like kind of snow fence kind of fencing, and some tarp and stuff that was wound up in there just to create a barrier and to keep things out. But it was like ripped all the way down it in like an L shape, so it would create a flap, and it was like something was just reaching in at night, grabbing a chicken or two, and hitting the woods. And so these people were like, what the hell's going on? We got this hole in our chicken coop, and we got this rip on the back side, and we don't have feathers anywhere. We don't know what the hell's going on. So Don and I and Cindy actually went up and checked this out. And we came across, we went in the...
Were they losing just chickens, or did they lose eggs? Did they have egg-laying chickens, or was it just chickens that were coming up missing?
Just chickens that were coming up missing. They didn't notice any eggs that I'm aware of, because I think to access the eggs would have taken a whole different approach.
Okay.
It had to go in the kennel and then lift up a big plywood door to get to the laying area, and then, so that never happened.
Okay.
But they were down to 9 chickens out of 30, and no feathers anywhere.
Yeah.
And we went and checked it out, and Don checked it out first and found this structure, and that's the pictures that you'll be seeing on the screen. This is a kind of a dome-shaped structure. It's probably around 6 feet tall inside. But the interesting part of the structure is that the base of the structure is about a 6-inch sapling that's bent over. It's bent over, and then all those other branches are woven. It's like a rudimentary weave to hold them in place and to keep this thing down. Just an incredible structure, and not a cut branch is used in the formation of this. Every one of them is snapped, and I sent you pictures that show some of those protruding sticks coming up. Now, if those were deadfall, they would never have fallen like that, first of all, because they would have fallen, the heavy part would have fallen first, which would be the broken end into the dirt.
Right.
But all of the broken ends are up in the air, and all of the foliage edges are down, creating a barrier around this dome-like structure. And you can see when you look at the one picture, it looks like an entryway. It looks like, there's like a cross piece, and then there's 2 X shapes on either side, or that, there's an X shape, and then there's a cross piece on the top. And you look at the way those sticks are laid out, and it's really a very rudimentary kind of weaving that was done with these branches. Meanwhile, all of this is holding that bent sapling down, which is creating the meat of the structure. So really incredible. And then there's one shot that's kind of up in the air, and it shows all these crisscross branches. That was on the tree next to it, which was a huge 70-foot conifer. And, all of the bottom branches were broken off up to about 30 feet. And those branches were what made the structure. And it's like they were doing a side build of some kind too. And that's like the crisscross branches, a shot that goes up to the sky. Very, very wild. So we searched around, and about a half mile from there, next to a railroad track going up onto the mountain, on the other side of the railroad track, there was there's an embankment going up onto the mountainside, and that's where we found that print. Now, there's a couple pictures of the print, but there's one in particular that's a lighter color. Now you can see the big print, and it takes up most of the picture. And I didn't notice this at the time when we were there. But when I was going into Photoshop, making sure the color balance was good and stuff. And I zoomed in on the shot, and on the one picture that has like an aspen leaf on the right edge, just below halfway, right next to that, you see a little mini print, like a baby print. And I didn't see that at the time, but if you zoom into that picture, you will see there in that big print, there's a baby print, and it's about 4 inches long at most.
Nice.
Yeah, so it was really
Spotulate. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it was a family group. Now, the interesting thing with this structure is that after we discovered it, after we documented it as much as we could, and took a lot of pictures, and we're in and out of it, looking around at how they built it. After that, we've checked back over the course of a year, and they haven't touched it since. It's just fallen into decay. Mm-hmm. So we figure that, and you agreed, Duke, that it's once the scent is there of people, they don't want to be there.
Yeah, because they don't trust our intentions. I mean, we could be setting up one of those hokey, weird, magical devices that tries to steal their soul or something.
Yeah, I did that.
Game cam. Yeah.
I had to trail cam on it and did nothing.
Yeah, yeah. And that's exactly why, you get those situations where I've had other researchers do that too, where they more or less locate where they're at, and they'll get into the area where they're at once. And sometimes they're actually there. Mm-hmm. But the next time they try and come back again, generally they moved somewhere else. So just like, humans figured out where our hiding spot is. Let's go to hiding spot B, because they know more than one. There's more than one around the general area that they know.
Right. So the weird part, get this, the homeowner was out before we ever got there. The homeowner was out, saw the hole in his chicken coop, and he said out loud, he was talking to his wife, he said out loud, I wish I had some twine. If I had some twine, I could tie this shut and just, to get it closed up. Mm-hmm. And he said, but I've looked around the shop and I don't have any. He came out the next morning and there was an old piece of twine that was tied into the opening, closing it. An old piece of twine that looked like it had been weathered for many years was suddenly tied, that opening closed.
That's just a tad weird. No, I'm sure there was just some kind of a freakish, very small microburst that picked this thing up out of the top of a tree where it had been laying for 40 years and just happened to tangle it in there in such a way so it looked like it had been tied up.
It was a freak breeze that blew it. Yeah, I don't know. But, it's creepy because, again, we have so many stories of Native Americans having dialogue with these things in the ancient past, having I've heard stories of them having trade, some tribes having trade of some sort with these creatures. Could they know our language?
They certainly could. And I get reports of that sort of thing all the time that leads me to lean heavily toward, they probably understand quite a bit of our language because they like to watch us all the time.
Right.
And we talk to each other. And they get cues from what we're saying as to what it means. It doesn't take them long to figure out when they yell somebody's name and the person turns and looks at them, that's their name.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
So I mean, extrapolate from there. How much time do they spend watching humans? How much are they picking up on? Some of these things have been caught staring in people's windows just watching their TV. Well, how often does that happen? How fast can they learn stuff from watching TV? And God help us if somebody is watching, Planet of the Apes and they're watching it or something.
I was just going to say the scary version of that is, what if they think all that's real?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. No, I don't know if you saw this particular episode, but that actually happened to Caveman. He had his couch right next to the window, big, huge window, had the drapes open, he had the TV on, he was laying on the couch watching, he had Planet of the Apes on, and all of a sudden he got this creepy feeling. And he sort of turned just a little bit so I could look out of the corner of his eye. And there was a huge squatch looking in the window watching the TV. Oh. And he was just like, oh, God, what do I do now?
Put on cartoons.
Yeah, quick, hit the remote.
Operation Scooby-Doo, engage.
Yeah, the worst of all possible movies to be showing when a Bigfoot's looking in your window, Planet of the Apes. Don't give me ideas.
That's a good idea.
That seems to have worked out fairly well for them. Perhaps we should try it.
Yeah, exactly. Crazy news. But yeah, I've heard the same thing when we had interviewed Bear on the show. He said we are their entertainment.
Yeah. And it really seems that way, especially in areas where there's like high activity. Like, some people are sort of out in the middle of nowhere and they know they're around the house and they hear them every so often and they're on the yard and stuff like that. That's where you hear a lot of it. They'll catch them looking in the window and watching people and stuff, And, I like to joke about that too. The two Bigfoot get together and meet right about nightfall and ask each other what they're up to. And one says, well, after I catch a deer, I'm going to go down and sit at that little turn in the road, wait for a car to come by and then run out in front and scare him. What are you going to do? And he's, well, it's just about time for my favorite show, the Johnson Family Dinner. So I'm going to sidle over to the local barn and just kind of stand there and look through their picture window and see what they're up to.
It's time for the Johnson Show.
Yeah, the Johnson Family Dinner Show.
Wonder what they're serving tonight.
Yeah, what are they serving? What kind of yummy leftovers are going to be thrown out in the trash tomorrow that I'm going to be enjoying?
That's right, yeah. Oh, that's funny. But I think they do. Watch us.
Well, you hear it so much. I mean, I joke about it and everything, but the reason I do is because, honestly, I hear these reports with this sort of activity so often. Uh-huh. And a lot of times the people don't know anything about Bigfoot, and they're just so terrified by it There's this huge thing on my property. I don't know what it is. I saw it looking in my window. It slapped my house one time. It knocked my wood pile over. It's going to kill me. And they're all freaked out. It's like, no, there is just a curious Bigfoot on your property, and yours entertainment. Try to be less entertaining, and you'll quit paying attention.
Yeah, close your drapes, maybe.
Yeah, that's it. Close the drapes. Then he can't see in the house. He loses interest. Yeah. And I mean, sometimes it is just that simple. They will be trying to provoke a reaction. Right. They'll slap the house to see if you run out of the porch and scream and shoot off your gun, or if you run into the middle of the house and hide, or I mean, that's all interesting to them. They're getting a reaction out of you on purpose. They're judging what you're like.
Right. I tell you what, the stories that really freak me out are the ones where people have claimed they've come into the house.
God.
Oh my Lord. Those are the ones that make my blood run cold, because that's got to be a whole different kind of reality at that point.
Yeah, in general, from what I've been able to gather, that seems like that's sort of after they cross the point of no return.
Right.
They're in a house and there's actually humans in the house. That's a really bad sign.
Right.
They shouldn't be doing that.
Right. Yeah, and I'm sure they even know that at that point. But
yeah, they do. Yeah. I mean, think about it from their standpoint. How tall is the average roof inside of a house?
Yeah.
If you're an adult male Bigfoot, your head's scraping the ceiling. You're in this tight little enclosed space where you don't know what's in there, what kind of potential hazards could be in there. That's a horrible risk for something that's that shy and careful to try and take, unless there's some really compelling reason, which I'll leave your imagination of what that could be, that would draw them actually to come into a house with humans in it. And just about every situation I've heard where they've done that, it seemed like they did not have good intentions.
Yeah, that's my point. It's like, if they're crossing that boundary, you're in a whole different world of problems.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they'll come in houses and steal food and stuff if you're not there.
Right.
But if you're actually in the house and they're coming in, that's right. Not a good sign. That's bad.
Yeah, I agree. Those are the ones that bug me. And you don't hear them too often, but when they do, man, I'm telling you, it gives me the goosebumps. I'm just like, oh, Lord.
Did you ever hear that one story from, it's sort of right in between where both of us are right now. If you drew a straight line between us, you'd almost cross it. The Flathead Reservation. They had a Bigfoot up there that was getting way too acclimated to being around humans. Uh-huh. He was not only stealing the trash from outside their house, he was starting to break into the houses when they were gone and steal their food.
Oh.
And most of the families did the right thing, which is to make a stink about it, make it quite clear they weren't happy about this and they're going to shoot Bigfoot's hairy butt if he kept doing it. Make loud proclamations to that effect outside their house at night and whatnot. One family did not do that. They just figured if they ignored it, it would go away and there wouldn't be a problem anymore. And it kept getting closer and closer to their house until one night the family was out on the porch in the dark and Dad was having a cigarette, and this thing snatched Dad off the porch and proceeded to beat the living hell out of him and hauled him off into the woods.
Oh.
The kids went and hid underneath the bed inside the house, and Mom got the neighbors. They got a big posse together, heavily armed, to go return Dad. And apparently after a few miles, they did find him. He was still alive. They brought him back, and a bunch of the guys continued on to where the problem Bigfoot was. They located him, and they blew lots and lots of holes in him and buried him.
Oh.
And the father was in such a state of shock that he never actually came out of it. He stayed in shock until he died, which was only a few days later. He had just about every bone in his body broken. This thing had just mashed him.
Oh.
So you don't play games when these damn things are coming on your property and trying to get into the house. You're way past the point where you should have drew the line and said no.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That's horrible. What a nightmare.
Yeah, and I mean, the wife and children saw this happen. It happened right before their eyes.
Oh.
And they got to hear their father getting beaten to death by this horrible thing, hauling him off into the woods.
Yeah.
Apparently it thought it was going to come back and claim the mom and the kids as its own, maybe, and take over the house or something.
Oh, God. Jeez. Yeah, that's I'm impressed that they knew where to find it exactly and did.
Well, these guys ain't slackers, it's their local territory. They're the natives, and
Right. No, that's cool.
Angry Bigfoot with 30 pissed off natives with high-powered rifles on his butt doesn't have much chance.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true.
And he might have been to the point where he just figured he was going to stand them off, and I just beat up one human, I'll just beat up you guys too.
Right.
Maybe never been shot at before, I didn't realize what was going to happen. You never know. So.
That's true. Yeah, that might have been his first experience.
And last, definitely, because they've got guns for shooting moose, and there's a whole pack blazing away. He ain't going to last very long.
Yeah.
But in addition, is that it for Bigfoot related stuff? Because I know you had another thing we wanted to talk about.
Yeah, by all means, let's move on to that.
Yeah, you had a really cool sighting, and before we go into yours, I want to just say that I've never actually told this story because it's kind of not that great of a story. But I had a UFO sighting when I was a kid. I was out late at night, and the sun had gone down. It was about half an hour after sunset, and again, winter, sledding. Mm-hmm. And everybody was getting ready to go back to the house. And I kind of walked up to the top of the sledding hill and I had a full snowmobile suit on, so I wasn't cold at all. And I laid down in the snow and just started looking at the sky. And I was sitting there, this thing went drifting slowly by. And I would have sworn that it was a balloon, except it was upside down. So it was like ice cream cone shaped, except point up instead of point down. Mm-hmm. And it was glowing red. And it just slowly floated by in the sky off to the north. It took it about 3 or 4 minutes to go past. And I have no idea what the hell that was, but it sure didn't look like conventional aircraft.
Wow. That's really powerful.
It was kind of weird, but, compared to some of the other things that had happened to me, it was, after you see Bigfoot at 40 feet away at the, hey, there's a glowing thing up in the sky. Yeah, no big deal. Is Bigfoot around here? Okay.
Glowing things don't have teeth. So
yeah, exactly. That's where I was at with it. It was just, for me, it's a classic UFO sighting. I don't know that it was alien. I don't know who made it. I don't know exactly what it was. It sure didn't look like any conventional aircraft. It wasn't making any sound, and it was moving really slowly. And I would have thought it was a balloon if it wasn't upside down and glowing red.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's unusual for sure.
Yeah. I mean, so that was well, there's my little weird UFO sighting, which is nothing compared to the cool one you had. So let's hear yours.
Okay. So the story goes, all my life, again, I've been open to all of this stuff, but my whole childhood, my whole teen years, my whole adulthood, I had been looking at the sky because I've always had an open mind that there's other things out there. There's other people out there, other beings out there. And I believe they came from far away and they're visiting us. But I look and look and look as much as I would. I just never, ever saw anything that I could certainly qualify as, this is definitely not normal. Everything I'd ever seen was just star fields and maybe a shooting star. So I always wondered, what was I doing wrong? How come people would have all these sightings, and most of them were just seemingly random, but here I was trying to see something and never did. And so I kind of had shoveled it away or shelved it away in my mind that, I still had an open mind, but I don't know. I guess I just wasn't meant to ever see one. But I was actually it was one of my first visits to this area that I live now in the north of Idaho. But I was out here on a business trip, and the owner of the business had a mountain house. They hadn't actually moved into it yet, but it was all fixed up and ready to go. And it was about 20 minutes east of town. It's no city anywhere near. It's just all way out there in the mountains in a beautiful mountain valley. And he said to me, hey, I can get you a hotel if you want, but how would you like to just stay in our house? It's all ready to go and nobody's up there, and maybe you'd like that. And I was like, well, yeah, that'd be brilliant. And he and I talked, and I knew he had this pair of night vision binoculars. Now, they were only 4-power binoculars, so they're not serious military grade where you're seeing a mile away up close. But they're 4-power, and I thought, it'd be really neat the night that I was up there to go outside and look at the night sky, because there's no light pollution whatsoever. And I knew that most of the stars in our galaxy are actually red stars, and they're not really visible with the naked eye. And so I thought it'd be neat to take out these night vision binoculars and look at the stars. They were just so vibrant, even without any kind of help. They were just brilliant in the sky. That's absolutely pristine and beautiful. And I, of course, tried the binoculars. I'm looking up at the night sky, and boom, there's just so many more stars. I couldn't even recognize constellations. There were so many more stars in the star field than I'd ever seen before. It was just spectacular. And I would highly recommend it, just for the sake of doing that. If you ever get your hands on night vision, go look at the stars, because you won't be able to recognize things like the Big Dipper or Orion or Ursa Major or whatever anymore, because of the introduction of all these other stars that we don't normally see. So I'm up there having a ball. I'm all alone up in this mountain range. There's other cabins around this house, but nothing closer than a quarter mile, and all of them were seasonal, so nobody was up there at this time. It was, I think it was late spring, as I recall, but it was about 4 years ago or 5 years ago now. I guess 5 years ago now. And I was all by myself up there, and I'm panning around looking at this night sky, and then I'm like, I've never really had the opportunity to play with night vision goggles before, or scope, or binoculars. So I'm looking around, and I'm like looking at the opposing valley wall of the mountain going up across from us, or from me, because I was alone. And I can see all the trees and stuff, and I'm just having a good time, because it's pretty dark. There was a probably a quarter moon, so there was ambient light, but it was just spectacular to check it out with night vision. And then I'm panning around on that mountainside, and then I'm like looking back on the side of the mountain that I'm on, and below us is like a creek going down the middle of where both mountains join. But I'm looking down the side that I'm on, and I'm looking down his driveway, which is a switchback driveway. And because of all of the conifer tree cover, it was pitch black. None of the moonlight was making it in there. It was just this deep shadow. But it was really cool to look at it with night vision and see everything. And then I decided to pan up. And so I panned up slowly, looking at this huge, 40, 50-foot pine tree next to the driveway. And I get to the top, and I'm panning up more, because I'm like, well, let's look at the stars again. And about 30 feet above the tree, and this tree is probably 250 yards away from me, maybe 200, probably closer to 200. But I get to the top of the tree, and I'm about 30 feet above it, and bam, I'm looking through these binoculars, and 30 feet above this tree is, no kidding, the proverbial flying saucer. And it's sitting there above this tree, just hovering, absolutely silent. Not a sound came out of it. Now, when you consider the idea of a flying saucer, you think of the two pie plates right next to each other, so there's like the sharp rim where the two pie plates come together. Right. Well, on this one, they were separate, and there was these panels of light in between, just these rectangular panels between the two plates. But they were alternating a blinking pattern, like going circular around this thing in a clockwise motion. I'm like, oh my God, there it is. There's a UFO. And I'm absolutely beside myself. It's running silently, and I see it sitting there hovering, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm seeing one. I'm finally seeing one, and there it is. And I was just in a state of jubilation and shock at the same time, I guess, because all of a sudden there was just no more doubt. I mean, I had an open mind before, but in this moment, this became real. They were there. They were here. They're there. I mean, it's just a real thing now. It's that transition in a paradigm for believing it's possible to knowing it's real. And I was just having a ball looking at it for about probably 20 seconds. And then I was like, I got to see this with my own eyes. And as I mentioned, there was a fraction of the moon out at this time. So, I could see around the treetops and stuff and see the stars and everything. So I lower the goggles, or the binoculars, and look up again, and it's not there. It's gone. There's nothing there. There's just a treetop and a blank sky. I'm like, what's going on? And I hear the wind, the breeze going through the trees and stuff. I lift up the binoculars. It's there. This light is flashing around it continually. It's sitting there hovering, just motionless. Lower it, it's gone. Raise it, it's there. Lower it, it's gone. I can't see this with my naked eyes. Somehow, this craft was invisible to my native light spectrum that my eyes can perceive. It wasn't there. But if I was looking through the infrared spectrum, through these binoculars, it's there. It's right there. It's huge. And I'm just like, oh my God. And it just dawned on me, these things can hide. They can be right in front of us and we wouldn't know it. They can be right there and be absolutely hidden from our view. And only because I was looking in night vision could I see it. And I'm looking at it and I'm just like, oh my God. So this is, at this point, when I first saw it, I was like, I'm aware of the whole idea of black projects and reverse technology and reverse engineering alien craft. And I'm not, I'm looking at it going, it just doesn't look like a TR-3B triangle. But, could it be one of ours? Maybe, I don't know. But as soon as I realized it wasn't visible in our native spectrum at all, it was like, nope, this is from out there.
Yeah, it's probably somebody else's technology. They got cloaking down pretty well.
Right. This ain't from these parts. And then I was like, I'm looking at it and I'm looking, and then I realize, I'm up here in the mountains alone looking at this flying saucer, and they're hovering above a tree that's about 200 yards away from me, and there's nothing else going on in this valley. They're probably sitting there looking at me.
Like, watching them, deciding what to do.
And then I realized, no, they're aware I'm here and they're watching me. And now this got really, really, really real. And I didn't feel I needed any probing that night. So I decided I was going to bed. I just put the binoculars down. I'm like, okay, I'm going inside. Locked the doors, went inside, sat on the bed for about 3 hours, and it's about, 2 in the morning or 2:30 in the morning before I'm just, finally normalizing my heartbeat a little bit. But and in the meantime, I'm peeking out the blinds like, are they out there? Are they out there?
God.
Nothing else happened that I know of. I mean, like, I don't think anything else happened. Like, I didn't lose time or anything. I just was like, wow, they were here. That's it. That's real. And that was my first experience with an actual UFO.
That's really creepy. And part of it is that you got to look at it so well that you couldn't convince yourself it was something other than what you saw.
Oh, no.
It wasn't just a distant light in the sky. They could go, it could be anything,
No, it was so close, Duke. It was like looking at a car floating above a tree. I mean, it was even bigger than that. It was like, I don't know, what would I liken it to? The size of it, if it was up close, would probably have been something like, maybe not quite as long as a semi-truck, but getting close to that, in diameter, that kind of length.
Right.
It was pretty damn big. So it wasn't just, oh, geez, that's just swamp gas reflecting off of Venus. I mean, it's,
yeah.
There's no way in hell I'm missing that. That's a flying saucer. That's exactly what it was. So extraordinarily profound and really, really cool. Now, the interesting thing is after I had that experience, I got home back to Minnesota, and the first thing I did was go on Amazon and order a pair of those binoculars, because I'm like, they could be out there anytime. We just wouldn't see them.
Yeah.
We have no idea they were there. Maybe they're always there, but we just don't walk around with infrared on all the time. And so I got a pair, and no kidding, I've caught some really cool anomalies, one of which a video you have, and I'm sure you're showing now on the broadcast.
Yep.
But, and interestingly enough, that video, so these binoculars have no way to record on them. So what I did was I rigged up a GoPro knockoff that we got at Walmart, and I kind of rigged it up to sit in one of the eyepieces. And it was my very first night of trying it. I went outside in the back porch of my house right now that I'm living in. And I stood out there and turned them on and looked through the eyepiece and looked through the camera thing. And I'm like, okay, we're all lined up. And I started panning the sky, and boom, there it was. It was right there, and it was going away from me. Now, what you'll see is that it's a solid light. It's a solid kind of glowing light, but it's pretty bright, and it's much brighter than the stars behind it. I know it's not an airplane because, first of all, there was no noise. We live near an airport in town here, and you can hear airplanes no problem, especially at night here because it's a quiet, small town. There's no prop noise at all. There's no noise at all. It's flying away from me, so it's not landing lights. The only kind of lights that would be bright on a plane would be landing lights, and those shine in front of them in the direction they're going. Right. This thing is heading away from me at an easterly direction, so I'm kind of facing north. and it's flying off to the east away from me. So it was probably closer, when I'm just setting up the goggles and stuff, it was probably closer, but by the time I angled up and was, getting the footage, it was flying away. And that I've caught many other little anomalies, but they're so much higher than that. That one was much lower. The ones I normally catch are these real faint balls that seem to be in the upper atmosphere moving around, and they're not satellites. They will do things like change direction. They will do crisscrossing patterns, nearly hitting each other. But they're up there doing something. I don't know what they're doing, but it's crazy. I know. And for those of you that don't believe in this stuff, I understand, believe me, but I'm here to tell you, this is what I've seen. This is the one piece of footage I do have that I can't explain, and you be the judge.
Well, I'll tell you what, the other thing that this brings to my mind is the phenomenon also occurs with orbs. Because I've heard this quite a few times where people have had orbs where they can see them and then they look through the camera and they can't see them. Oh. Or they can see them through the camera, but they can't see them with their naked eye.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. No, you're talking spirit orbs or UFO orbs?
No, just like regular orbs, whatever they are, the little dinky things that float around through the woods and will o' the wisp trying to lure you to your doom.
Right.
But, and then another weird thing is, in another case, they were actually seeing one orb, but when they started filming, they got three.
Oh, wow, that is cool. Now, have you seen apparently one of the shows, I don't know if it was which one, it was one of the shows that was on Discovery, Destination Discovery or Destination America or whatever that channel is. I think it was on there. They were doing this research project into some of the lights and I think it was like Kentucky or Tennessee or something. There's this famous lights that would appear in the valley below.
Marfa lights? You talk about the Marfa lights?
I think so, if that's the right place. But what was going on is they used night vision binoculars or night vision scope to record them. Now, anybody familiar with Generation 1 night vision will know that it's all just green. It's all just hues of green. And that's all it can record. But when they recorded these lights, this one light, it came across as either blue or red. I can't remember. I think it was blue. It came across blue on the footage, and they took the camera to the manufacturer and said, how is this possible? And showed them the footage, and they said, that isn't possible. That can't happen. These are only monochromatic displays.
Yeah.
So something really strange is going on with those lights, too. That's a whole nother animal. Now, I've not seen those in the forest. I've seen orbs, like spirit orbs, up close and personal, but nothing like the forest orbs. Those are much bigger, usually about the size of a basketball, is what I understand.
Well, I have a friend who is a hunter and doesn't really believe in paranormal stuff that actually saw an orb. He was sitting on a steep hillside, and there was a big, big pine tree that was growing out of the base of the area down below him. So he was about, even with about 40 or 50 feet up the tree from the top of the hill where he was sitting looking straight out in front of him. There was about 40 or 50 feet up the tree. As he was sitting there watching, because he's looking down the hillside, he's watching the game path down there to see if deer are coming or something. You start seeing this little shimmering, and so he starts looking at it more closely, and it looks like one of those reflective garden balls that you'd see in a garden. Right. Same size and everything, looked silvery like a reflective garden ball. And he first thought was like, why would somebody throw their garden ball down here in the middle of nowhere? And then he realized it was moving. It had just come up through the ground, and it was floating up in the air slowly. And it floated straight up. It took like 5 or 10 seconds until it got eye level with him, and then it stopped for like 2 or 3 seconds. And then it shot off at ridiculous speed straight up.
Oh, my God.
That freaked him out pretty bad because this is like broad daylight. And he's like, what the hell was that? Just happened.
Oh, my God. Yeah, that's trippy. That's all kinds of weird.
Yeah, I'd almost rather see Bigfoot than have that happen personally. And it wasn't a glowing orb. This was like silver. It looked just like one of those garden gazing, or what do they call them? Whatever it is. You guys know what I'm talking about. Sphere, and looks like chrome.
gazing balls or whatever they say.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
And that really freaked him out. The only other paranormal thing he ever had was he was at Coloma about the year before I went there, and he found some tracks one day, and his dog wouldn't come out of the camper, and yada yada yada. Yeah,
sure.
So you can figure that one. That's how I got interested in Coloma. He showed me the pictures, and I went, "Well, I need to go to this Coloma. Where is this place exactly?"
Time to get the Duke Mobile rolling.
Yeah. There's clearly a Bigfoot track there in Coloma. It was there last year, so I'll go see if there's any more new ones for this year.
Well, it could very well be. They seem to be creatures of habit.
They seem to live up there during the summer. I think that's their fave spot during the summer in that area anyway. Mm-hmm. Well, brother, did you have anything else to share? We're over the hour mark here, so we're going to have to wrap it up.
No, I think I'm good, but I'm really honored to be here. And ladies and gentlemen, I'd love it if you'd check out our podcast. It's available. It's a Paranormal Portal podcast. It's available on iTunes, Pandora, Spotify, anywhere you find podcasts. It's there. And check out our YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/Paranormal Portal. And thank you, brother, for having me on. It's been a real honor.
No problem, man. And he's also on TFR Live and the Revolver Radio Network. So check it out there, too.
Hey, thanks, brother.
Didn't want to let you forget anything there. Now I got to remember all my stuff too. Thanks for coming on the show, man. And hey, you guys go check out his show 7 nights a week on YouTube, and it's always on at the same time, 7 Pacific. So wherever you're at, figure out what time that is. Go tune in. There's live chat, and usually he's got phone operational. You can call in, tell your stories and stuff too. It's just a riot. He's got a really great regular crew that are there all the time. And so it's a lot of fun. Go check it out. And meanwhile, I'd like to thank everybody that's been sending their prayers and well wishes for the situation that I've been in here, being in and out of the hospital every day for the last week and a half. I'm getting kind of tired of that. But I really appreciate all your prayers and your support. And I also want to, again, thank those who have provided monetary support for the show. You are the ones that are keeping this program going. This is entirely viewer funded. So you heroes that step up to the plate and make donations, you are the Knights of Squatchingham, and the Duke appreciates your aid very greatly to keep the show coming to everybody. Also, if you have pain issues and you need something to help you with that, I've got you hooked up. Go to myctfocbd.com/Duke Sullivan. You can get CBD products there. There's a wide variety and selection. It's a 60-day money-back guarantee. So you can go check that out. And if, it doesn't work out for you, get your money back. And like I said before, if you'd just like to donate directly, that's at paypal.me/World Bigfoot Central. And no donation too small or too big. I really appreciate it. And I really love you folks who are so willing to come through and try and help me keep bringing this show to you, because I like doing it, but it doesn't pay me anything. So anyway, thanks again for being on the show, Brent. I'm looking forward to having you back in the future, man. And, maybe I'll come past you and be on your show or something too.
Absolutely, brother. We got your podcast going to be coming out a week from now on Friday, I think, but I'll let you know for sure.
Oh, I'm going to be on your show again? Cool.
Yeah. Enough of the Duke.
Well, it should be fun. I probably talked about something interesting, I hope. But if you're putting it up, it's got to be worth listening to, I'm guessing. So
Absolutely, man. It's always classic.
All right, brother. Well, again, thanks for coming on the show, and big appreciation for being able to do that at the drop of a hat. I know you're super busy right now, and I really appreciate you taking the time to come on the show. And I hope you folks will take advantage of the fact that he's got this other show out there, and I really like it a lot. And it's not just me. Tony Merkel from the Confessionals, Wes Germer from Sasquatch Chronicles. We all like Brent's show. We all try and check it out as often as we have the chance to do so. So it isn't just me saying, hey, go check Brent out. Some of these other guys really like his show too. So it behooves you to go check it out and see what it is that has us so interested.
So make sure that you're kind to everyone. Safety first, last, and always. Pay it forward. Don't be mean to people if you don't have to be. Don't flip off the mountain giant. Don't poke Dogman with a stick. Don't punt the puckwudgie. And for God's sake, whatever you do not hug the Wookiee. See you later, folks.